Shalom Yashrala, this is your brother Dawada, coming back at you with this here truth again. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of great millstone that taught us this truth and our will. And salutation and much love for you. I keep pushing this truth and sincerity over the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions to feed and edify the elect. So I want to jump into this here lesson real quick as far as, touching on some of this here wickedness that Esau has done as far as, going around the world covered in fields and things like that and coming up with all his different philosophies, his Babylonian juice and things like that he likes to push forth, to propagate his so-called expansionism. All right, this is one of the things that Esau is pretty much known for. All right, as far as covered in fields, stealing all the lands and everything, even into modern day times. But just want to touch on this as far as what's going or what has happened with the so-called Native Americans and things like that, and how Esau's pretty much came over and took up their lands. So I just did a quick little search on the doctrine of discovery. All right, and it says indigenous affairs. What is the doctrine of discovery? I'm gonna read a little bit about this. I'm gonna go back and hit some of these little quick points. It says the doctrine of discovery includes all doctrines. All right, going into that Babylonian juice, they come up with all kind of different things. Oh, this is this way, this is that way. Even with a lot of their so-called pseudoscience, man, they come up with all these different excuses to, so-called justify certain things. And you've even heard some of these things in just the BS they spring forth. Even talking about Judah, talking about the reason Jake be out there dunking the ball like he be dunking his, he got an extra. Muscle or some shit in the back of his leg. They come up with all these little bullshit things, the skull sizes and Darwinism, all these different things. But ultimately, it's to do what? It's to so-called make himself seem more superior than everybody else on the earth, to give reason to why I should be in charge of everything, right? But let's just read on in this. It says the doctrine of discovery includes all doctrines, policies, and practices based on advocating superiority of peoples or individuals on the basis of national origin or racial, religious, ethnic, or cultural differences. And it's ironic that now, in this point in time, when Esau is being exposed for being the inferior race, all right, the fact of the matter is now he has a lot of controversy and censorship on what we preach, because ultimately it's not a superior complex or anything that we're preaching or anything. Hey, the scriptures say, dealing back when the twins was born, one nation shall be stronger than the other. All right, it just is what it is. Just like in a race, you have to say, hey, one of them's gonna be faster than the other one. Somebody's got to win the race. It don't mean that in a sense that you hate no one or the other. It's just, hey, running a race, one's got to be faster than the other. In a drag race with two cars, hey, at the end all be all, one is always faster than the other one, right? So, now all of a sudden, after all these years of them preaching out this here madness, all right, and it was madness because it wasn't true. It was the opposite of what they were saying and everything else like that. Like they would also preach, Judah, basically talking about Judah with their black skin or brown skin. All right, has your skin is brown because you're under a curse. Well, they get that kind of from the curse of when Ham, all right, did what he did, but the curse actually went on Canaan, all right, in which it has nothing to do even with a skin curse or skin color or anything else like that. They were just going to get their lands taken, all right. That's obviously where you see the land of Israel at today, all right. But nevertheless, when you really go into the skin, all right, that one has a more superior skin than the other one, all right. And I'll leave that up to your own imagination. I'll give you a hint. When you go out to the beach, you go to your Walgreens and stuff like that, or go to a pool, they sell a sunblock and sunscreen. Who is that normally used for? Who do you normally see putting that on to so-called protect them from the sun, versus the people that was out in those fields that was slaving day in and day out without that, and they still have a certain tone to their skin where they say black don't crack, But nevertheless, let's and that's again, that's just the proof is in the pudding. That's not saying, oh, this is not a supremacy type doctrine. All right, we didn't come out with the skincare products to protect their skin because they realized that they had some deficiencies. All right, but nevertheless, let's go back into this real quick, not getting too far off topic. It says the doctrine of discovery has endured impact on indigenous people. All right, talking about the Northern Kingdom, and the right to readdress Article 28 and 37 of the United States Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. As with this discredited notion of the terra nullius, the doctrine of discovery was used to legitimize the colonization. So listen, it was used to legitimize, all right? They came out with this to make themselves seem righteous in what they was doing. Oh, see, we got the right to do this because this here paperwork says so, all right? The doctrine of discovery was used to legitimize the colonization of indigenous people to the different regions and the different regions of the world, just like how today they go around the world and under the terms of liberating certain nations and spreading freedom and democracy to these different nations. Under those terms nowadays is what they do to go over here and destabilize and uproot peoples in their nations and overthrow their governments and ultimately steal these nations. Well, here we're talking about the nation of Israel. All right. It says, it was used to dehumanize, exploit, subjugate indigenous people, and dispossess them in the most basic of the most basic rights. And so this is why they come out and talk about, we're less than human, subhuman, three-fifths of a man. And one of the basic things that in psychology, as far as if you want to wage war on people and you want your people to be barbaric and show no mercy to the other people, first thing you have to do is dehumanize the opponent. So even when you look at a lot of these military campaigns and things like that, and just the terms that Esau and his military uses, never really human words when it's talking about the enemy, but there's always human words when talking about these Americans. All right. So for instance, like, they say, for instance, if they're attacking a people, right? I'll give you a couple of examples. When the quote, I'm gonna speak from the American side, being the quote unquote good guys. When the good guys are over there bombing the other people, they call it what? Shelling. But if America's getting bombed, they call it being bombed. All right. Well, what's the difference? The difference is what side of the fence you on. All right. So when America's doing it, or their Western European allies are doing it, they call it shelling. It don't sound so bad. All right. So it dehumanizes the people over there. But when it's done unto them, they call it bombing. So it'll be so-called horrific in your sight, like, oh shit, we got bombed today and whoop-de-whoop. But when it's the other way around, when they're bombing other people, they take away the human aspect, say, oh, they're just shelling. All right, make it sound like, oh, they're just letting off rounds, they're not really hitting nobody or nothing else like that. But then when you have let's say a civilian population getting slaughtered out there, they don't now, if America had that happen to them, the Western European allies happened to them, they were like, oh, we had these citizens being slaughtered, being killed in the streets and everything else like that. But when they do it to the other nations, they call it what? Oh, it's just collateral damage. All right. They come out with these different terms like that. So, or when they want to go over there and, overthrow and be barbaric to these people, they use words like, oh, they're barbarians, barbaric people, insurgents, terrorists. All right. They dehumanize people with these terms to make it easier for these people to go over there and do these things to them. Just like when they talk about the so-called Native Americans, they call them Indians, what means savages. All right. So, again, you take away the so-called human aspect and the psyche of these people, it's just like, because again, just think about it. Think about how you felt when it was like, oh, we going over there bombing terrorists. We got to go kill all the terrorists and everything. None of you Americans felt bad about that. But then if you was to flip around, like, they finna go over there and start bombing men, women, and children and families and shit, you'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. What are we doing here? But, hey, this is what they got going on. They use terms, again, like rebels, the rebel forces over there. Like, well, you can always have a rebel force. I mean, it depends on what's going on. If a woman is being held down and being raped and abused by a dude, and she starts doing what? Rebelling against that, and she's a rebel to him, but that don't mean she's a bad person. She's actually the victim in this here sense. So, this is just what Esau does to dehumanize people, to sit there and cause terror upon them. All right. Let me see. I wanted to get to a certain point, and I was going to stop reading in this, but it says, based on such fictitious and racist doctrines as discovery and terra nullius, European nations were relentless in their determination to seize and control indigenous lands. All right. So again, this is what Esau was doing to try to take the lands from Jake. All right. But now he wants to all of a sudden, how do I say, erase this from history and everything else like that. In fact, we're not going to read no more here. We're going to just go into some of these different things. All right. So you just click on these things. It says, we just read that one. Let me see, which one was it? One of these I wanted to click on. It was these two here. Oh, yeah. The doctrine of discovery established a spiritual, political, and legal justification for colonization and seizure of land not inhabited by Christians. So in this term, the so-called Christians is another name for what? The Edomites, in this sense, because this is who they were. Again, he covered the face of the judges. He has to change the names of, his side to make his side look good, because again, they go over to the other side of the globe to go tear some shit up. They say, oh, we're sending peacekeeping troops All right, we have to go over here with spreading freedom and democracy. They never put themselves in the so-called bad term of what they doing. But if you was on the other side, you'd be like, no, these people ain't no peacekeeping troops, man. Y'all not over here trying to spread liberation and democracy. Y'all over here, you over here spreading terror. But it depends on what side they on. It's like it. And what was the other one? I can't find the other one, but nevertheless, you get the point here of what was going on with the doctrine of discovery. All right, so we're gonna just jump into some scriptures real quick because ultimately, hey, this is right up Esau's alley to be doing these types of things, man. All right, it's nothing new of him. It's nothing like how do I say that oh, now all of a sudden he's a good guy, he's reformed, he's repented and things like that. Because hey, like I said, Lord was will, maybe I'll do a lesson on that as well too, about how he, because right now he's being called out for all these different things that he's doing in modern day times. The same thing, but not just on Jake's land, but on other lands around the globe, and trying to, not to say restructure, but he's trying to so-called overthrow governments in other lands and take control of their resources. All right, but this is just speaking on how they did Jake, man. All right. This is Micah 2, and I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, woe to them that devise iniquity. All right, and they have their secret councils and everything else like that, plan, plotting, and strategizing on how they're going to do some wickedness. All right, it says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in their power. It is in the power of their hands. All right, like the scripture also say, the earth was given into the hand of the wicked. Now, if the wicked, let's just put it this way: the earth was given into the hand of the destroyer. If he's the destroyer, what you think he gonna do? Destroy. So if the earth was given into the hand of the wicked, how you think he was going to treat this here place, man? All right, wasn't going to be nice. All right, it says verse 2, it says they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away, so they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. And that's exactly what they done over here to this here land, man. They came over here and stole this here land under false doctrines that they didn't came up with. All right, they created a so-called law and wrote their own so-called passes. See, the paperwork said that actually we own this here land and everything else like that, and you guys aren't entitled to any of these things, man. All right, came over here and took the whole land and impressed the man even in his heritage, man. Then came over here and hijacked their heritage. How do I put it? Their so-called nationalities and things like that. So you got these Edomites walking around talking about, after taking and putting the so-called Native Americans, under these boarding schools and everything else like that, wiping away their heritage, all right, of who they were, who they was calling themselves at this point in time, all right, and really they wasn't calling themselves that. Again, that was a name that was put on them, but, being the deed holders of this here land, all right, they didn't went and stripped them from all those things and indoctrinated them into a different heritage. Then Esau goes around and I believe what they call a $5 Indian or something like that, to where basically these Edomites can sit there and pay to have their quote-unquote identity changed on paper to say, oh, yeah, we Native Americans, so now we can reap the benefits, because these damn devils, all right, did all this wickedness today to the so-called Native Americans, and then all of a sudden had a so-called repentance on it. Oh, well, because we did this, how they say reparations for black folks and 40 acres and the mule, they pretty much did something like that for the so-called Native Americans, but it wasn't really for the real so-called Native Americans. This was only for the Edomites, because like I said, they could go out and buy the identity and say, oh, we were the ones that was how do I say, at the other end of the stick, taking this here punishment, man. So they reaped all the benefits of these things, man. Just like how they tell you nowadays that you can't have no casinos in America, all right? The only places that you can have casinos in America are on what they call Indian territory and things like that, all right? Now, who really owns these casinos, man? They'll say, oh, only the Native Americans can own them. But who really is it that own these casinos, man? It's Esau who done bought this here false identity and things like that. So again, this is what he wound up doing by oppressing the man even in his heritage. This is nothing new, man. He does the same thing. And even if he was to keep on going forward with how progress is going in forth with today, all right, hey, you let time go by long enough, Esau likes to, we see how he covers the face of the judges thereof, but you'll see he'll like to try to, erase so-called slavery and put up things as far as he was the victim of all these things, so therefore he should be the one to have some remorse paid upon him, all right? They like to say, oh, well, I've been even hearing some of these narratives. Well, not that many black people went into slavery. Actually, more white people went into slavery than black people. Oh, there was more black slave owners than white slave owners. I'm like, really, nigga? But hey, again, if you let them control history like they want to control history, this is what it will wind up being like, man. All right, it says, let me read that again. It says, and they covet fields and take them by violence. All right, they didn't take it nicely. All right, yeah, they came out with these different doctrines and everything else like that, but they also had to enforce these things, man. All right, you can go back and look up a lot of different history and everything else like that to where, they deem certain land. They'll say how they even do it to this same day, man. All right, they shit, it's called gentrification, man. All right, for instance, if you go to Atlanta, there was y'all heard about T.I. and all them rapping about this place called Bankhead, which is on the west side of Atlanta, which it's not even called Bankhead Highway no more. It's Donnelly Hollowell Parkway. Now, all those streets over there, they all changed up all the names of those streets. Now, some years back, I lived back over there in like around 2008, 2009, and everything at that point in time. Now, the houses over there was going for really, really cheap, but it was like every other house was boarded up with no trespassing. If you go over there now, all these homes are basically, they devalued the land. Jake wound up moving out from over there. All right, Esau went over there and bought up all the land and was holding on to all the land and kept the houses in shambles with no trespassing signs up into modern day time. Now they didn't built it up real nice, but they first condemned the land. Hey, this ain't a spot where you really want to live. Oh, we can't sell you these homes. They're in such a bad condition. Or, hey, we got to run a pipeline like the Native Americans. Hey, we got to run a pipeline through your land, so y'all going to have to move, and we're not going to give y'all shit for it, man. Are we not going to give you we'll give you a voucher, but the voucher ain't going to be really worth what you can really go and buy to go move it somewhere else, man. Or we're going to have to run a highway through this here land, or we're going to basically flood this here area, or some type of way contaminate the land and make you not even want to live over here no more, man. So they take it by violence, man. All right, it's never like, oh, well, Jake, we bought this house. Let me just give it to you in simple, quick numbers. We bought this land for $100, and you're going to offer us $1 million for this here land, and that $1 million is really going to be worth $1 million comparably to the $100 I bought the house for. Jake don't ever end up like that, man. All right, if they bought a house, if Jake bought a house, let's say, again, for easy numbers, for $100, Esau give him the equivalent to $10 to go and relocate with, man. All right, so, hey, whether it's by the force of the sword, all right, you have a lot of these Jake's like Black Wall Street, where they went and burned down a town. All right, I found out about Lake Lanier, where they flooded a town. All right, all these different things. They take these lands by a force of violence, man. It says they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away, so that they oppress a man in his house, man. So they got Jake over here being thrown out, even modern day time today, man. Raising up the rent so high that you can't even afford to live no more, man. All right, raising up the prices of your certain rent in these apartments and things like that. So it's too expensive to live in these areas, man. This is what they wind up doing. It says, so they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. And like I said, man, ultimately at the end all be all, they'll come through and change up your so-called heritage to make it hard for you to be who you are. All right, and everything else like that, like they did the Native Americans. Oh, well, we gotta re-identify y'all. Y'all gotta become Christians and everything. Cut your hair and take away all of the things you was doing and everything else like that. Then all of a sudden, they take your heritage, man. All right, they take who you are. Just like us as overall as Israelites. We can't be Israelites. We got to be so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And we could be anything else here in America we want to be. Claim any nationality we want to claim here in America, except for the so-called, well, not so-called, except for the Israelites. But guess who is claiming that they're Israelites, man? And if you say anything about it, they call you, there's an anti-word that they call about it, man. They say you hating on them, and they have all these laws protecting them because of the atrocities that happen unto them. And really, like the scriptures say, there's nothing been done as it been done unto the children of Israel under the whole heaven, roughly paraphrasing. Talking about you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. They like to compare, 6 years and 6 million people to hundreds of years in the transatlantic slave trade, or the sub-Saharan slave trade, or when they was trading the so-called Native Americans, or the 100 million Native Americans that was killed off, man. There's nowhere near in comparison for these things, man. We could pick one of those, and it's 100 times more atrocious than the things that happened to them in the 1940s, man. But nevertheless, this is what wound up happening to Jake, man. All right, but let me continue on from there to continue on with this here point real quick. Just wanted to really touch on this real fast. This is Job 24. I'm gonna start at the top. Let me just read real quick, not going too far into this. But Job 24 says, "While seeing times are not hidden from the Almighty, do they that know Him not see His days?" All right, you didn't consider the latter end. It says, "Some remove landmarks; they violently take away flocks and feed thereof." So, hey, you remove the landmarks and certain borders in the lands and everything else like that, because you can go back, you got however many 50-something states here in America, what you know of as the United States today. All right, but then ultimately you can go back to the 100 nations that the so-called natives had over here, man. All right, they tell you, oh, they discovered America and everything. How you discover a land that somebody was already living in, man? All right, how you gonna so-called say, oh, I built that house, but that house was already being inhabited by another person for the last 100 years, man? They was getting mail there and everything else. All of a sudden, you gonna just show up, like, oh yeah, I just built this house from ground on up. Like, bro, no, you didn't. I've been living here for so long. You know what you got going on over here, man? But this is Esau, man. He come over here and claim all these things based off his own doctrines and things like that, man. His own philosophies. But ultimately, hey, it's really a part of the scriptures and things like that, because we were going to go into captivity under Esau. But hey, now you being found out about, man. Now you being brought to the light. All right. It says they drive away the ass of the fatherless. They take the widow's ox for a pledge. They turn the needy out of the way. The poor of the earth hide themselves together. So hey, you know, they subjugate all the poor and the needy, man. Everybody's afraid of Esau because why? You see Esau coming around, he willing and you know, he looking at what he could take from your ass, man. Esau see you with some good prime example, Black Wall Street, man. You go into the story about that. Esau was the poor niggas at that point in time, looking at Jake living all nice and everything else, having better furniture, better houses, better everything than them. They got what? Jealous. So what did they do? They concocted a false allegations upon them and went through there and started stealing all their shit and burned down the whole town, man. All right, and this didn't happen in not just Black Wall Street. Like I said, you can look up what Lake Lanier in Georgia. All right, what is it called? Rosewood. I believe that was here in. Is that the one in Florida? It was one in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Chicago. There was all these different places like this around the United States. But hey, they ain't really there no more in that same stead no more, because why? Esau wound up taking away all these, you know, all the possessions of Jake, man. This is what he winds up doing. All right, let's go to Ezekiel real quick. This is Ezekiel 35, and let me just get to the point. Verse 10, it says, because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries shall be mine, and we will possess it, whereas Yahweh was there. And what are they talking about here? They're talking about what? First and foremost, the land of Israel, which, again, you can see who's over there right now, the 48ers, all right? They over there right now in that land, all right? But then also you had the Northern Kingdom, all right, that came over to the Americas, all right, North, Central, and South Americas. All right, before, you know, when they came over here, they discovered a new land. Who did they discover over here? They discovered Jake over here. But now who's ruling over here, over top of Jake over here right now? Esau again, man. So, hey, he took these two lands and he's possessed the two, all right, and pushed us out of these things and subjugated us into these lands, man. All right, but, hey, this is ultimately, you know, going to come into his curse if we could read on down. Well, let me read a couple verses down. Verse 11, therefore, as I live, saith Yahweh power, I will do according to thy anger and according to thy envy, which thou hast used out of the hatred against them, and I will make myself known among them when I have judged thee. And thou shalt know that I am Yahweh, and I have heard all thy blasphemies which thou hast spoken against the mountain of Israel, saying they are laid desolate, they are given to us to consume. So these are these blasphemies where they come up with all these words. Oh, you guys aren't Christians, and this land was for Christians, and the Lord gave this land to to our forefathers from, you know, they took what the Lord told us. All right, but you know, again, ultimately, you know, Esau was going to get the fatness of the earth, but you know, when he came out, he said, oh yeah, the Lord gave us all this here land, this is God's people and everything else like that, and people kind of fell in line with all of that, man. All right, you know, all the house of David, the kingdom of Israel and everything. You know, you can even look at the Queen of England. Apparently she's got the throne of David over there, man. And they how they say, have a, you know, the crowning ceremony on that their throne, man. But hey, ultimately, you know, the Most High is about to correct all these things because we're at the end of Esau's reign and his rulership, man. All right, but nevertheless, hey, this is what Esau wound up doing. Let me read this real quick in Ezekiel 36. It says, also thou son of man, prophesy unto the mountains of Israel, and say, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh power, because the enemy has said against you, aha, even the ancient high places are in our possessions. So like I was just speaking on, they came over to the land of Israel and took of the land. It says, therefore prophesy and say, thus saith Yahweh power, because they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that you might be a possession unto the residue of the heathen, and you are taken up in the lips of talkers and the infamy of the people. Therefore, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yahweh power. Thus saith Yahweh power, to the mountains, to the hills, and to the rivers, and to the valleys, to the desolate waters, and to the cities that are forsaken, which became a prey and derision to the residue of the heathen that are round about. It says, therefore, thus saith Yahweh power, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea, all right, which Idumea is a Greek way of saying Edom, all right, and all Idumea which have appointed my land into their possessions with the joy of all their heart, with despiteful minds to cast it out for a prey. So again, it's even clear as day here who stole whose land, man. All right, we're still hearing that day at this important time. All right, let me grab this real quick. And Exodus 21:16, it says, and he that stealeth the man and stealeth and selleth him, and if he be found in his hand, he shall be surely put to death. All right, and that's, we still in his possession until this same day, man. And what did Esau wind up doing? Taking us and moving us around the globe and putting us in subjection up under him, man. All right, but this is going to be his ultimate, how do I say, his ultimate judgment. And this is why he's being upset right now, because he's being rebuked for all these different things that he's wound up doing, and now it's coming to the light, what his judgment would be. All right, I'm gonna close out with this. This is Jeremiah 30:16. It says, therefore all that devoured thee shall be devoured, and all thy adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. So, all the things that Esau wanted doing unto us is going to be turned on to his own head, man. He's going to be put in subjection, and he's going to, like, the scripture also say, let me just grab this real quick, about the restitution. Job 20:18, it says, that which he labored for shall be restored. Shall he restore? He shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restitution be, and he shall not rejoice therein. All right, so let me read the next verse. Because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor, because he hath violently taken away a house which he builded not. All right, so ultimately he's going to have to pay up all these same things which he swallowed down. So that's going to be the restitution, man. You over here looking for how they call reparations and things. Hey, man, the Most High is about to restore us whole 100%. Everything that we was given through the Spirit, which was the possession of the whole earth and all the heathen therein. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close out with that. Lord willing, the elect was edified with this here lesson. Until next time, I say, call halal Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakudash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of great millstone that taught us this truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for you, Aki, and pushing this truth and sincerity over the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions to feed and edify the elect. Until next time, I say, stay strong. Shalom.